Good evening. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being such a great audience and being so patient. We are packed here, and with good reason, because we have a great show tonight. So good evening and welcome to the Bruno Walter Auditorium at the Library for the Performing Arts, and welcome to all of those out there who are joining us via live stream. We're very excited to be doing that as well. I'm Betsy Perlmutter, the Assistant Manager of Public Programs here at the Library for the Performing Arts, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you tonight to our program, Platinum Punk. Tonight's program is part of our new series, Rhapsodic City, Music of New York, in which over 6 weeks we delve into 6 musical stories, exploring the city's distinct role in the formulation, emergence, and legacy of some of the most exciting movements in the 20th century. From hip-hop to the folk music revival, Prohibition-era jazz, mambo, and salsa, and the Brill Building in its heyday. We have an exciting lineup of scholars, artists, and films between now and April 27th. So I encourage you to pick up one of our series brochures outside and join us. Of course, tonight is all about punk. And we are lucky, and we are a lucky group indeed, because we have Debbie, Harry, and Chris Stein here. We are also incredibly fortunate to have Will Hermes as our moderator for this evening's conversation. Will is the author of Love Goes to Buildings on Fire, 5 Years in New York That Changed Music Forever, in which he brilliantly narrates the interweaving New York City music scene in the 1970s. We have copies of the book outside, and we'll be outside after the program to sign some copies, so I really encourage you to pick one up. Will is also a senior critic for Rolling Stone and a longtime contributor to NPR's All Things Considered. His work appears periodically in the New York Times, and he has also written for The Village Voice, among many other publications. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight's program, Will Hermes.
Thank you. It's great to see this room packed with some familiar faces. And I'm incredibly flattered to be here for a number of reasons. One, probably first and foremost, is because this book would, if it was finished at all, would not be anywhere near as good, if I can assume it's fairly good, if it was not for this library. I did a lot of research here, both from their bound periodicals collection, where I found material that exists nowhere else in the country, also from their film and video collection, where I found stuff that also would have been completely lost to time if it was not for the work that the people do here. So I am very thankful to the library and their staff for preserving stuff that has not been digitized. It's kind of hard to remember that there exists material that has not been digitized. But the program that this evening is a part of has been put together by Betsy and her staff, and it really covers the spirit of what I was trying to get at in this book, which is New York is, at any given point in history, home to multiple music scenes, multiple art scenes that are all happening simultaneously. Sometimes they intersect and sometimes they don't. And a lot of the histories of what happened during this period in the 70s that I write about tended to atomize the musical scenes into the incredible creative output that was the punk scene. Then there was the disco scene, which was its own world of creativity. There's the hip-hop scene, which was just bubbling up at the time. Less chronicled was the salsa scene, which was the center of the Spanish language music world, was in New York City during that era. The downtown composers, the loft jazz scene, which had also been sort of overlooked by jazz historians, but I think now, especially among young players, is beginning to get its due. all of these scenes were happening simultaneously and were really fertile. And I'm excited to be here with Debbie Harry and Chris Stein, because I think in the work that they did, maybe more than any band that came out of the punk scene, really reached out to, connected with, absorbed, communicated with other music scenes in the city at the time. So we'll talk about that later. But just to sort of set the scene of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to bring them out in just a second. I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from the book, which runs from 1973 to 1977, strictly chronological. So this is January 1st, 1973, and a scene from the Mercer Arts Center, which Debbie and Chris can speak to and lays out a little bit of the territory that we'll be talking about. An hour after midnight on January 1st, 1973, Ernie Brooks was barreling down I-95 towards the city in his mother's Volvo. His band, the Modern Lovers, had been booked for a New Year's Eve show at the Mercer Arts Center. The New York Dolls were headlining. But his van died outside of New Haven. So he hitched to his parents' house in New Canaan, got the family car, drove back to the van, jammed guitars and microphones into the Volvo, and drove like hell. The Mercer was packed. There were teenage girls in mini skirts and garish makeup. There were guys in mini skirts and garish makeup. A woman wore a dress that had been cut into pieces and reassembled with safety pins. The Modern Lovers went on around 3:30 a.m., plugging into the Dolls' amplifiers. As a rule, they wore t-shirts and jeans, but for this gig, their leader, Jonathan Richman, had bought a white dress shirt. During Hospital, a love song as raw as a skinned knee, he ripped the shirt off. A girl standing beside the stage bent to pick up a stray button as a souvenir. The Dolls went on just before dawn. The lead singer, David Johansen, wore a white blouse, tight white pants, and white platform heels. He swigged from a bottle of Miller, flipped back his hair, and introduced a song called Trash. The band was sloppy. The bassist, who was wearing a yellow plastic tutu, could barely play, but they were thrilling. And the song sounded amazing, like some 50s rock and roll gem, retooled for a more jaded age. There were lots of artists in the crowd that night, actors, dancers, musicians. Truman Capote was there. So was Richard Myers, a poet who was beginning to play bass and write songs. He was very impressed. Richard Myers later changed his name to Richard Hell and just wrote a fantastic memoir which came out only a week or two ago, which is a chronicle of this era and after. But to devote the rest of the time to two people who were there, lived it, and built it, I want to introduce from New York City, Deborah Harry and Chris Stein. Are you guys ready? Come on out and join us.
Make themselves known soon enough.
So, my favorite Jonathan Richman story was he did a show at Town Hall right at the height of the punk insurgency. I don't know what you would call it. You know, right when it was really kicking off. And he came out, and rather than do the Modern Lovers material, he came out with a small acoustic band and played very low volume. And I just remember everybody in the audience yelling, "Louder, louder!" I guess he had to be there.
It was a very punk rock thing for him to do.
He was kind of came out, and everybody was, you know, remembering the Modern Lovers stuff, and he kind of did the antithesis of that. So it was ironic, to say the least.
Yeah, it's... Debbie?
I was
Something to add?
particularly impressed with the miniature drum kit. And, you know, I mean, the gear was
Yeah, it was
just
all...
sized down. Everything was
Does it have like a snare
Was-
and nothing else, or?
No, yeah, the whole kit, but it was like I guess a child size or something. It was great. It was great. And they had a perfect balance and everything. It was just small.
Man was a conceptualist.
Yeah.
But the thing about the New York City punk scene, I think, is that it, with a few exceptions of people who were born and raised in Manhattan, it was really built by out-of-towners, or at least out-of-borough folks. So I wanted to ask both you guys, Debbie as a New Jersey resident initially, and Chris as a representative of the great borough of Brooklyn. What brought you to New York, to Manhattan specifically, in the first place? Was it cultural scenes or musical things? What were your New York dreams when you dragged in here?
Well, folk music for me, because goes all the way back to the Washington Square period, you know. So I just was always coming in ever since I was a kid. I wound up going to high school after I got thrown out of high school in Brooklyn, Midwood High School in Brooklyn,
What were you thrown out for?
for having long hair. In 65 in my junior year there. And then my mom found this really great, cheap private school on 56th Street, which was over a motorcycle store. It was right over the Bull Taco motorcycle store. And it was a ballet studio on the weekends. And it was right across the street from Carnegie Hall. And Johnny Thunders went there later, and Patty Duke went there, and it was called Quintano's School for Young Professionals. And there were probably a couple of kids there who were professional kids and were in show business, but mostly it was miscreants like myself. And it was just academic. It was a very small environment, and it was awesome. So I used to come from Brooklyn on the subway all the way up to 56th Street every day for high school, and it was great. And even before that, I was just coming in and hanging around the West Village, because the West Village used to be the equivalent of the East Village scene. You know, with the Love and Spoonful and the Night Owl and all the Bazaar and Jimi Hendrix and Richie Havens and all that junk. That was all going on long before the East Village was a thriving musical center.
Yes, and that's why I wanted to come to New York. I did. I wanted to be a beatnik forever. I just wanted to be a beatnik. And I was so disappointed that they were gone by the time that I got here. I mean, there were remnants, of course. But, I mean, where else would a person go besides New York City?
And whenever you get here, there's always some amazing scene that you just missed by like minutes. But you arrived here, Debbie, as you were doing various jobs, but you were involved with kind of a folk rock band initially.
Yes, I guess that's what Chris and I had sort of had a folk thing.
You know, I mean, the Ramones are folk music, let's face it.
Yes, it's all folk music.
But The Wind in the Willows?
Oh, yeah,
So I mean, you guys made a record.
we did. We
On a major
actually
label.
we made two, but the second one they didn't release it.
Ah.
The hidden tapes.
How did that group?
Lost.
I know somebody who's running a reissue label right now should take note. But was this a band that came together in New York, in New Jersey, or?
It was my best friend from high school's husband They were freedom riders, and they came back from Mississippi in, I guess it was the end of the 60s. And folk, they had to be folk musicians. And so, I was just hanging around. I really didn't have a clue about much.
Were they like sincere? Were they trying to cash in on the folk trend of having the sitar in the background, or were they sincere about their approach? Or both?
Oh, I don't remember a sitar in the background.
Yeah, there's a tambora. You
The
played-
tambora,
you
yeah.
played some of that stuff in there.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, it was, I guess it was the flavor of the day.
Yes, sitars were kind of mandatory for a little
Yeah,
while there
yeah.
on
No, it was
folk rock records.
It was, I say it was Baroque.
Yeah.
And you were also, you had a few day jobs, famously at one of them at Max's Kansas City.
Yeah, that was great.
As a
Max's
waitress.
was great. I got to hang out, meet a lot of, Max's in that reincarnation, or that, era, was Mecca for all different kinds of people from all over the world, and a lot of, it was totally international art, film, and music scene, and it was fascinating.
Right. Was music your thing? Did you know that was the direction you wanted to go in when you were
Yeah,
here?
pretty much. Yeah, I sort of went through the sort of short phase of thinking that I wanted to be a painter. But then I just sort of, music was so much, such a part of me, and I don't know. I'd always been so in love with music.
Okay. And you both had some interesting bands going before Blondie came together. I know, Chris, you had...
I played with the guys who went on to become the Left Bank when they were in their, they were called the Morticians. And I did one gig with them in a barber shop.
And the left bank went on to have a big
soon
radio
thereafter,
hit,
somebody gave
the name of which is
one of the
escaping me
guys,
right now.
one of them, I can't remember the names now. I should know, but I don't. They funded them, and they hired a string section and did Walk Away
Renee.
Walk Away Renee, and all that stuff. Those guys went on to heights, greater heights. They have reformed with George, who was in the Morticians, who was the drummer. I see it. They actually do some little fringe gigs around, I think.
Huh.
Really?
Yeah, there's like 3 of them left, or 2 of them left.
And was this the band that opened for the Velvet Underground?
Yeah, I opened up for the Velvet Underground.
You've had this Zelig-like existence, Chris.
Yeah,
It's
I
amazing.
know. I am well aware of that. I was on Haight Street in 1967, all that stuff. I remember the day my friends came running into our communal house and going, George Harrison just showed up on Haight Street. And there was a poster floating around for years of Harrison arriving in a limousine on Haight Street. So I missed his actual appearance, but I was around the vicinity. I got to L.A. the weekend of Monterey Pop, but I was so horny to go to San Francisco that I didn't go to the festival. I always regretted it, actually.
But you did make it to Woodstock.
I got to Woodstock. We were both at Woodstock, yeah.
You were both at Woodstock.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Oh, yeah, it was.
It was great. So in 1967, I had a friend who was working for Andy Warhol, and he would go to Andy's house, and he must have been like 14 or something. My friend Joey, and he had waist-length blonde hair, which for 1967 was even pushing the limits, And he would wake up Andy in the morning, and he was really cute, and he was the gopher for the factory. So one day he showed up at my house in Brooklyn. We were just all hanging out, and he said, they need a band to open up for the Velvets. And we all knew who the Velvets were, because we had been listening to the record, it was a great thing. The first Banana record was amazing, and it came out in the midst of all this Flower Power stuff, and it was this dark, somber thing that was very counter to what was going on at the time. So we got on the subway with our guitars and junk, and we went up to this place, the Gymnasium, which is up here on the west side somewhere. And that was it. There was nobody there. Andy was there in the shadows. It was, 5 people. It wasn't a gymnasium. It was a big gym in like some building or high school or something. And they let us use their amps, and Maureen Tucker let us put her bass drum upright, because she used to play the bass drum like that, you know. And it was great. It's a vivid memory.
Wow. And is it something that stuck with you musically? And
I remember how great they were and how they made use of the acoustics of the room, because it was this big echoey room, and it really threw us off. We didn't know, we weren't up for that at that time. You know, I hadn't been doing much of this, and they were really into the echo and the reverb of the room, and they were on top of it. It was great.
Jumping forward a little bit of time to the Mercer Arts Center, which I had just read that segment from, there was a glam scene there that sort of predated punk and, kind of, it seemed to me anyway, embody a lot of the sort of sonic ethics that punk took in a slightly different direction. But were either of you guys involved in that scene as musicians or as players?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, well, you were hanging out with the Dolls and all those guys.
Yeah, I was just a fan, a groupie.
A New York Dolls fan?
A groupie, yeah. Fan, yeah.
But
I love them, love them.
He was in the inner circle of the Dolls, I suppose. And I was at the School of Visual Arts then, which I had. Anyway, I was there, and I used to see flyers in the lobby for the Dolls, and I always thought it was a drag act, so I never really pursued it. And then I finally saw an article in The Voice saying these guys are a great rock band, and so I went down to see them. And then I met Eric Emerson, who was opening up for them with his band called the Magic Tramps, and I somehow hooked up with him and got close to him, and he sort of mentored me into the rock scene, where he got me into Max's and all that stuff. And he wound up living in my apartment with me when Jane Forth threw him out at one point, and all this stuff. So I played a few shows with Eric over the years back then.
Yeah, he was one of the huge figures at that time who
Eric
really has kind of been lost to time.
He was a great character. He was in Lonesome Cowboys and Heat, which he has a great part as a mute in the Warhol movie Heat, which is if you have never seen it, it's a great thing. And he passed away early. If he had stayed with it, he would have gone on.
I'm not sure if that is in the library collection here, the film.
Well, Heat you could probably get on DVDs. It's a great. It's one with Sylvia Miles, I think.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a great movie.
Right. And then there was the band that sort of brought you guys together initially, the Stilettos. Talk about them. What was the idea behind the Stilettos and how they come together?
Oh, I saw Elda at Max's, actually.
Elda Gentile?
Elda Gentile, yeah. And I had known her from the Dolls days. And, she said she had, I was there to see a band. I don't remember which one. And she said that she had a band with Hollywood Lawn. And I said, give me your number, because I really want to come and see I want to see it.
Hollywood Lawn from Andy Warhol's family.
Yeah,
Superstars.
Yeah. And so I called her, and she said that the band had broken up. And I said, well, let's start another band. And that's what we did.
And was it drawing on, it was a rock band, girls group?
Everything. It grew from Elda's love of cabaret and rock, and my interest in rock and R&B. And then we had another singer, Roseanne Trapani, who was really very much into soul and R&B and gospel. So, we just all took turns singing our favorite kind of music. And eventually, we actually got musicians to play with us, and that's how we met Chris.
Well, I was the first show I went to, right?
Yeah.
I somehow wound up at the first show of the Stilettos, because the girl I was with knew Elda. So, and then I really thought Debbie was fantastic. So I was the first non-transient musician in the Stilettos, because all the musicians were changing all the time.
Yeah. They were all from other bands, and they would just, help us out.
And you guys looked absolutely fabulous. I mean, the pictures from that era.
Yeah, we
Still
were
rocking platform boots, and it was
It was fun.
It was still glam and sort of
Yeah.
this trashy glam
Yeah, trashy glam.
motif, you know.
And Stilettos ran their course and then evolved into Blondie.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Well, you know,
But there were a few.
Is
There were
there
a
stuff
few
in the book about the 82 Club?
intermediary.
Is there stuff about the 82 Club?
Club 82, which
Yeah.
was kind of a transvestite bar.
Yeah, because that was a great scene, and it's really overlooked in the New York music history.
Lower East
scene.
Side, right?
Yeah, it was on the Lower East Side, and it went way back, and it was some kind of transvestite gangster bar, you know? and the people who ran it were all these really butch women. And Tommy was at the door, you know, she used to have a, you know, greaser haircut and a man's white shirt, and that was it. And they had a picture in the back of Abbott Costello with a drag queen. And I
From a film? I must have
no,
missed
it was
that
from
one.
them showing up at the club
It
sometime.
was,
you know,
it was
just
all
hanging out.
pictures
Yeah,
from inside the
and
club.
I wish to hell I had stolen it. You know?
Yeah. No, and I don't, nobody knows. Tommy worked for a while at La Mama after 82 closed, and I used to go over and
The
say
82
hi.
Club was like on 3rd Street off 2nd Avenue in a basement. And it was a really thriving scene for maybe like 2-3 years, you know, and the Dolls played there, everybody played there, and the Stilettos played there.
It was
several
great. It was a
times.
great little nightclub. It had a real nightclub vibe. It's nice.
And the Stilettos fell apart because
It was 3 girls.
it was time. I guess that could sum it up. Debbie, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was 3 girls, but there was 3 lead singers. And I don't think any band can handle that. I mean,
That goes
take for
beyond
instance
gender.
Brian Jones, Chris.
Brian Jones?
Yes, Brian Jones and Mick Jagger.
Yeah, well, yeah, we all know about that.
Well,
I
and
was
this,
thinking more
this
Beyonce, you know.
You think you're Beyonce? Okay.
right? They've buried the hatchet and
But
got
didn't
back
play
together
the
again.
Super Bowl, yeah.
God bless them for sampling a song of yours. But Blondie came together. What was the game plan? What was the aesthetic sort of blueprint when you guys put the band together? Was there
It was
one?
pretty
Was-
you know, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't anything, it was just to have a band, we had a girl lead singer, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, we tried a lot of different things. It was very experimental, very, I don't know, we tried a lot of different stuff. And you know, the only reason that we actually started writing music was because we sort of had to.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
you know.
well, to keep up.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why I remember the first time I saw the Ramones, it was like so amazing because they were so defined in what they were doing, you know,
Yeah.
it was so specific, and they had it so, whether or not it was planned out on their parts, it came off like it was super planned out, you know.
I think it was planned out, totally. Yeah, it was like the Army. I always thought of them as being like the Army because everything was so regimented and it was just do it.
They had an idea, they had the uniform.
Stick to the plan,
Yeah.
yeah.
Song lengths, but you guys were a little bit more amorphous, and you began playing, I guess, largely at CBGB's and at Max's Kansas City. Were those the 2 main places you played when you
There were
started
other
out?
little places that came and went. There was a place on 23rd Street. What was that, Mother's something?
Mother's?
Mushroom.
There was this
Mothers.
place called Monty Python's that was
Yeah, Monty
on
Python.
3rd Avenue near the Taxi Driver film set there. There were other places that came and went.
Yeah.
We played a lot on Long Island at my father's place. Is that the name
I
of it?
think that came
Right,
later.
in Roslyn.
That came later.
Yeah.
But
A little later, yeah.
was playing at CBGB's, did you feel like there was a unifying aesthetic there? Did you feel like what you were doing was fitting in with that, whether you call it punk or something else?
I don't know. The thing about punk, I think, has sort of, gone through this revolution. I don't mean in you know, in a revolutionary way, but I mean, it's just evolved and gone around. It sort of, I mean, the name came up from the magazine, Punk is Coming, Punk is Coming, and, you know, all of a sudden it became the punk scene, but there were, you know, different types of bands, different kinds of music, and everyone was sort of very accepting of that. There was no, you know, it wasn't like a religion where everybody had to play, you know, 3 chords and that was it. And it just...
I think it was probably really, really diverse. It was probably much more diverse down at CBGB's than anybody imagined, because there were all these, there were hundreds of bands that never surfaced, that never, you know, that you never heard of, and they were doing all, it was very eclectic mix of stuff, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you could go from Jane County, Suicide, Television, Us, Ramones, Hands of Dick Manitoba,
And then what about like the Shirts and all
the
these
Shirts,
bands?
the Dead Boys. I mean, it was
never
really a
surfaced.
lot of variety. And, oh, what was the other?
I can't remember. It was another, what was like Another Pretty Face? was
Another
a
Pretty
band.
Face, yeah,
They
Bobby
were-
Prettyman, yeah.
They were playing around, you know, they were kind of like, what, like the Tubes or something maybe, you know.
Yeah, even the Tubes.
Right, well, those were San Francisco,
Yeah, but they were there. Their
Ambassadors to
presence,
punk.
their presence was there. You know, I think wasn't Fee there? I mean, didn't they
Yeah,
come
I
and
think they were
play?
showed up. Just
Yeah.
Another Pretty Face reminded me of them. I can't even remember
Yeah.
what the hell they were about though.
right, well, was there a sense of community? I mean, you know,
Yeah, sure,
from what I have read and heard, it seemed like there was, but there were also kind of, you know,
It got a little
schisms.
when the record companies showed up and the manager people showed up and all that stuff, and there was suddenly this, you know, financial aspect to the whole thing. It became a little less communal. But the first couple of years, it was very. I remember going in somehow and using older Ramones amplifiers for one show, and we didn't. I think we might have even used their guitars. I can't remember why we didn't have our own gear there.
Oh,
but-
we got robbed.
or something, maybe. Yeah, maybe that was that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a film made by Ivan Krall of the Patti Smith group called Blank Generation, I believe, and there's a scene in it. You can find it on YouTube, and it's of a New Year's Eve party at CBGB's, I think 75 to 76. There's no audio, but it seems like everybody was there. You were there, Debbie, with a tiara, and Chris, you were rocking some new wave threads, and Delaney Kay was there, and the Ramones were. I mean, it just seemed like one big happy family, and it made me wonder. Gosh, was this
What were they on?
really one big happy family? that was not depicted at CU. That was left on the editing
We had a
floor.
fabulous New Year's Eve once, and they opened up the Fillmore East one New Year's, and it was a pile of wet, moldy, old seats and stuff, and maybe even some of the seats were gone, but the smell of mildew was so overpowering, I almost passed out. But it was Ike and Tina Turner.
Yeah, I remember that. Going to see them, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Was that on New Year's? I don't remember the.
Yeah, that was a New Year's.
I remember
New
the
Year's
show,
show.
Yeah, I think John Holstrom, who did Punk Magazine later, I think he was working the light show
Was he?
for them, if I'm not mistaken. There's a sense, I think, and I guess you guys are bearing this out, that the 70s music scene sort of started as a break from the 60s, that like the 60s needed to be kicked to the curb, ground into the pavement, and this new thing had to start. But it seemed that there was a lot of sort of overlap, and that there was
Of course, yeah.
a lot of drawing from
It's always a
things
layering
in the
process,
60s.
always.
Yeah.
Lately I've just been saying that the 70s are kind of eclipsing the 60s, because the 60s maybe have just been kind of wrung dry, for material. Maybe everybody's moved on. And there was something about the city being so blighted and wrecked that, adds to the romance of the
Yeah,
period,
the poverty.
but also to the freedom and the deconstructivist mentality behind all the music, everybody breaking things down and putting it back together again. You know, the hip-hop stuff is the same thing. It's about deconstructivism, you know, changing forms and pulling old styles apart and putting them back together again, you know, physically with the records, all that stuff. So it's all hooked up there. But yeah, everybody got along great. Those, I'd say, the first 3 years at CBGB's. Then, you know, it did kind of falter towards the end when everybody started getting record deals.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there was, were there camps, were there crews that you were tighter with? It seemed like the Ramones and you guys.
Yeah, I was very close to the Ramones. There was a television, Terry Ork, Patti Smith clique. There were all these different groups, yeah.
Yeah, that seemed like to be more like the high art rockers versus the pop rockers. Is that
That's a
accurate
fair assessment, yeah.
assessment?
We were closer to like the Dead Boys and the Ramones and those guys.
Okay.
God knows why.
But television was great, you know. Television was probably really they were the first ones out there with the ripped clothing and the short hairdos. You know, we were all still sporting long hair at the time, you know.
Well, Blondie, part of the band's presentation, I mean, the fashion element, I mean, and just being sexy as hell, that was something that seemed kind of unique to the scene at CB's. I mean, in terms of, how was that conceived in terms of, you know, Debbie or Chris, in terms of how you guys presented visually?
We like the British fashions a lot, you know. We really like the mod fashions with skinny lapels and ties and stuff.
Yeah.
That was part of the male sensibility.
Yeah, sort of, you know, to sort of back away from the wide lapels and the big leg pants and just, you know, to really do the opposite.
Yeah, because you remember in the 70s, everybody had fucking collars.
Come on, you've got one.
Oh, you know I've got one.
But a lot of the whole CBGB's thing was a backlash against, you know, the music that was going on at the time too. You know, Linda Ronstadt and all this stuff. It was very MOR. I don't even. Do people still use the term MOR? You know, which means middle of the road. You know, that was what was going on in mainstream music. You know, I mean, you know, I've learned to really like Fleetwood Mac and all that stuff. But you know, I remember at the time it seemed a little tame for me. You know?
Right, but in terms of packaging the band and presenting yourselves, I mean, television and Patti Smith presented themselves kind of more down and dirty. You guys were a little bit more elegant.
Well, we got, we got signed. We did a lot of little sort of independent things, and then we got picked up and, sort of by an English label, actually. So that we became, whatever we are, Brits, Brit freaks.
Yeah,
I mean, it just sort of evolved that way.
Blondie has a heavy British identity, you know. So.
Which was the other big schism in punk, besides the aesthetic schism of the CBGB's bands.
Yeah.
Then there was the New York versus
London.
Yeah.
The UK. And so you were well received by British on the British punk scene?
We went over for the first time with television, and they had been very much anticipated over there. And somehow, I don't know, I mean, the British media, the press, the rock press there was crazy fickle and controlling, and it was a whole different thing. There was no weekly national music periodical in America, ever. I don't think there is, maybe now, you know. And those things, you know, the Enemy and Melody Maker set the standards for what was hip.
Yeah, the tabloid newspapers devoted specifically to music in a very small country that came out every week.
So we went over with television, and in a nutshell, the press dumped on television and heroized us, you know, and said we were great. So and that's what happened.
That was that tour seemed a little troubled from the band relationship standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, that was after the Bowie Iggy tour, right? I guess.
Oh, I don't know.
Was that after that? I think it was. You know.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, the first big tour we did was with Iggy on the Idiot tour where David Bowie was actually up
Are
on
you
stage
sure?
with him. I think that was, that was earlier, right? Do we have our chronology?
England was before? that?
Yeah, and I remember, because those guys treated us so great, and I remember thinking, these guys are fucked up when we went over with television. Because Bowie and Iggy were super gracious to us, It was a terrific experience.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. I don't know why the hell we struck a chord over there. They love Debbie. They love the image of the brash American girl, I guess, too. And, it just always has struck a chord, and they've always been very loyal to us. The British fans have, maintained their connection over the years.
And they have a long history of, girl pop singers. A long, long history.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was the way back in New York or in the States at the time. It was limited, very limited.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the big female icons here were, Janis and whatever. It was a different thing.
Right, Dusty Springfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Petula Clark, all that stuff.
The other big rift at that time, this also between New York music scenes,
Yeah.
was disco. And Punk Magazine, in fact, launched its first issue with an editorial piece basically announcing that disco sucks, and that was sort of the aesthetic standpoint of punk rock. And yet you guys seem to, were you disco fans? Did you go out to
I always
clubs?
liked disco music. Disco music came out of R&B, and it was great. There was, yes, it was culturally kind of for the masses, and there was some really dumb disco music, but there's also really dumb punk music too. I don't know. I never had any. The main thing was we never really called ourselves a punk band. We always said we were a pop band, even at the time when people asked us what was going on. But everybody wanted to use the punk label as frequently as they could.
Right. So did you guys go to Studio 54? Were there discotheques that you frequented just
Sure.
because you liked
Yeah,
them?
I mean, I was she may have gone more. I was at Studio 54, I don't know, 7 times altogether. They threw a big party for Debbie when she was on the cover of Interview magazine there, and Andy threw a big party, and Truman was there, and all that stuff. That was a great event, things like that. But, I wasn't there with any regularity. I never went in the basement or any of that stuff.
Yeah. And we weren't regulars there at all.
But you put out a single that was one of the biggest singles of the era, Heart of Glass, which was a straight up disco song, and it was hugely successful.
We thought it was like Kraftwerk.
Which was kind of disco too. I mean, it did that feel transgressive? Like, were you saying, wow,
No, because
the
we had been
punks
so...
are going to be pissed at us because we're making a disco song? Was that?
No, it never occurred to us.
And I think that we had always been an experimental. We always had the experimental edge, for ourselves to discover, what we liked the most, and what we were good at. I mean, we were sort of learning.
The Parallel Lines record was on the charts for 6 months before they figured out to put that song out, too. So, I mean, nobody really saw that coming, including certainly the least of all the record company.
As sometimes is the case.
Well, that's something else.
And also at the time, in a scene that nobody really knew about at all until 1979, outside of the circuit of clubs in the Bronx and in Harlem and the park parties and certain areas around the city. The hip-hop scene that had been bubbling up finally started getting records out in late '79. And you guys connected.
Well, Freddie took us to
Fab
this.
Five Freddie.
Freddie took us to this event in Uptown in '77, and it was just super exciting. It was so exciting.
How did that come about? How did you meet Fab Five Freddie?
Freddie, we met from hanging around, and I don't know, was TV Party going on then? And I probably hadn't started up by then. I don't know where the hell we saw Freddie.
We kept seeing Samo on the wall, you know?
Yeah.
Same old signature and
The tag.
and the tag, and I don't know. All of a sudden, Freddie showed up. He came downtown.
Yeah, I
He was
can't
like, you
remember
know-
the first time we met him, really. I'll ask him. I don't know if he knows.
A few nights ago, there was a screening of great graffiti history film here.
Yeah.
That
Well, it's the first, Wild Style is the first hip-hop film. It really is, and I told this guy, as soon as this comes out, it's gonna be grabbed, the whole thing is gonna be co-opted by Hollywood, and it was immediately followed by this thing called Beat Street, which was a terrible Hollywood watered-down version of Wild Style.
right, more of a narrative driven than a documentary, but
Some dumb movie.
but the intersection of those scenes was accelerated, I think, a little bit through a single that you guys did that came out. Rapture came out in 1980, if I'm not mistaken. So about a year after the very first hip hop records dropped, Rapper's Delight and what have you, you guys put Rapture together. And what was the process of doing that, of having a sort of rap flavor on that song? I mean, that song is now it's sort of like a cornerstone of hip hop culture, really. I mean,
Yeah,
it was
the guys from Wu-Tang Clan told us that it was the first rap song some of them had heard, so that's a little mind-boggling.
Yeah, it was the first hit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it was all just sort of merging together for us, you know. When did we meet Niall and Bernard? Chic was all happening. I mean, it was just so, everything was sort of happening at once, you know, and you can't really separate it, because they were, you know, like the Scratchers were lifting all these lines from all of these, you know, great songs and great bands, and there was all of that, you know, stuff going on, and I don't know, it just seemed like it was a part of our world, that's all.
Yeah, we love Chic, you know, I mean, I don't know what Chic would qualify as disco music, but those guys were, you know, I was always enamored of that stuff, and we were really lucky we got to work with those guys.
They were like
Right
jazz, you
Early
know.
on.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the first and last argument in anybody who says that disco music sucks. It's
Yeah,
just
well,
like,
you know.
listen
Except
to
that
the first Chic
all
record.
pop music now could be qualified as disco music. I mean, really, everything now is dance music.
Yeah.
Well, this is the great irony of the schism between punk rock and disco, is that if anything has defined cutting-edge New York music for the last 10 years, it's been rock and dance music and hip-hop all kind of mashing together in various corners of the 5 boroughs. So it is a little bit ironic that these scenes sort of started out with schisms, which you guys went a ways to erase.
It was just a cultural thing. I really think it was because it was, you know, everybody in New York wasn't a hipster in 1977 the way they are now. So you had all those people going to those.
It wasn't an identifiable demographic that people really wanted to.
You had all those people going to discos, and I think it was much more of a cultural phenomenon, the anti-disco movement. It was more about that than it actually had to do with the music, certainly.
Well, you know, I'm super excited that one of the things Chris brought along today was a small digital portfolio of some of his photographic work from the 70s. That was always part of your creative life as well.
Yeah, I was always running around with a camera, yes.
And
it was always been a big conflict for me, like when I would go to an event, whether I would have a camera or enjoy myself, because if I had the camera, then I would be focusing on trying to take pictures and sort of lose sight of where I was sometimes. So.
Bob?
there's at least one other great photographer in the room right now. Bob Gruen.
But he never had that conflict at all. He's always got the glued to the thing, you know.
Well, should we take a look at some of these pictures, and maybe you guys can comment on some of the scenes? Thank you, folks.
That's Debbie and Joan. This is
Oh, my
like
goodness.
This is was the first time we met the Runaways. And they really were all like 16 and 17, and I'm almost positive it's in Boston.
Joan Jett in the center.
And there's, I have anecdotes about all these stupid pictures. The thing with, you can't see it in this shot. I have another shot of Joan from this same series that Shepard is making into an image, which I'm really buzzed about. And she's got hotel room keys pinned to her jacket. And sometime around that period, they got, I don't know if they got arrested or something for stealing hotel room keys.
Debbie, do you remember this scene? You're clearly smoking a cigarette back there.
Yes, I do. Surprise!
Did you guys tour with the Runaways then?
No, we
never
went to
toured
see
with
them
them.
like at the Rathskeller maybe. Is that the downstairs club in Boston?
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, I remember it was downstairs. It was probably there.
I know we also went to see them at my father's place.
Yeah,
And what were they like back in the day?
They were great.
they were great. You know, they were much maligned because of their femininity. I recently saw an old issue of Crawdaddy, and the whole review is this sexist slam about, and it's all because they're young girls. You know, the whole slant of the thing was how, you know, awful they were flaunting their sexuality and all this stuff, which is so tame by today's standards. Debbie got the same flack, you know, even from the great Lester Bangs was really pissed off that she was showing her underwear here and there, you know. So what can you do?
Andy Warhol.
That's Andy. They have the same hairdo.
Bad hair.
Yeah, and Andy said in the diary somewhere that, you know, if he had plastic surgery, he'd want to look like Debbie. And he was shooting her for her portrait, one of which, the violet one, just sold for fucking £6 million at Sotheby's, you know. And
Was this an album cover?
No, this was
Just the portrait.
Yeah.
That famous portrait.
Yeah, we've never
But see,
used
now
it for
the
film cover.
thing is now is that I should write a screenplay that I really am Andy. And that we had the surgery, you know.
And Andy used to shoot with a big shot camera. A Polaroid big shot camera was a camera that is
Like a shoebox.
With the bellows.
It's a box. You focus it by moving it forwards and back. There's no, you know. And we used to buy them for him for like $20 in junk stores. So it was always ironic to me, even then, that he was using these cheap-ass cameras to, you know, and selling the portraits for God knows what. You know?
Yeah. All of those Warhol portraits were shot with a shoebox.
They're selling the Polaroids. The big auction now, they're selling some of the Polaroids for, you know, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Next shot. A band from the great Midwest, Devo. Set this one up for us.
This is one of my favorite bands ever, Devo. And we recently toured with them for the first time. I guess it was, last fall?
For the first time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We never toured with them. And they're fantastic. They're amazing. They still are.
They're taking out the trash.
Yeah.
Was this a rooftop somewhere? Or?
This is on 17th Street on our old apartment.
Okay.
I have other great shots of them from these sessions. I wound up taking a whole bunch of pictures of them over the years.
Yeah, their career kind of got started when they came and played a series of shows at Max's.
Yeah, I remember going to see them. Anya dragged us to see them. I remember they were great. They were very exciting. They're still great. They toured. Mothersbaugh just keeps going, oh, I have a real job and I can't go out with you guys. They're all complaining that.
Mark Mothersbaugh from the band, one of the preeminent film composers.
Yeah, so that's what he's referring to. Yeah.
Next shot.
And that's the famous Vulture.
That's
shot.
punk rock.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that shot, Deb?
Well, I remember, finding all the dolls in the street, and the Vulture shirt wasn't that Joey's or something?
Yeah, it's from Joey and Howie, our friends.
I mean,
Joey
I'm wearing
Ramone?
Handsome
No.
Dick Manitoba's belt. I'm wearing Benton, our landlord's leather bikini bottoms. Joey's shirt, and
Yeah, no,
those
it's
are my
not,
shoes.
Not Joey Ramone shirts, it's another Joey. The Vulture
different
shirt,
Joey.
I wish I knew what the hell the genesis of the Vulture shirt was, but we never figured it out. We thought maybe it was a softball team. I know it came from Brooklyn, and we've reproduced it over the years, but
Yeah.
I don't really know what the heck it really was.
And you got Dick Manitoba's belt
Yeah.
from,
I stole it.
We stole it. We shared a rehearsal space with them, and they left it there one time.
And
We
he
took it.
insisted on having it back.
Yeah, I remember there was a big conflict over the belt. And this was shot for Punk Magazine for the centerfold. Debbie was the first fold out in Punk Magazine. And that's Debbie and His Holiness at the, and on the tour. This is, backstage on the Iggy tour. And it was great. It was a great moment. I mean,
look at you guys.
Yeah, everybody's so young. Look how young he looks, And you know those pictures, you ever see the pictures of him in his underwear on stage? The story of that is that he lost all his clothes during the course of the tour, and that was what he was left with his underwear, And, this was an amazing thing. Bowie was in the background playing keyboards and singing backups for Iggy, and it was a great thing.
Yeah, another out-of-towner who really is one of the architects of punk rock, who lived in New York for a bit of time, but really made his name and made the sound in Detroit. But you guys toured England?
No, it was States. We did the States.
The States.
With this. We were in Seattle, and after one of the shows, we went to the local punk house, which was, the house where all the punk kids hung out in Seattle, and we did an impromptu little set there with some of the guys from Blondie and Iggy, standing on a mattress on a board. A board on a mattress was the stage, and since then, every time you go back, somebody comes over and goes, "I was at that thing,"
Next shot. There's a story about this car.
I know that's not Debbie's car. This was in front of CBGB's. You mean Debbie's wrecked car, Camaro? No, that's a T-Bird. This was in front of CBGB's. I don't know if we know whose car that was.
Yeah, the car was always there. We never knew whose it was. But
It was pretty nice with white walls and spoke
Yeah.
rims.
It was
That's
obviously
a
somebody
bitchin'
who
ride.
came up. Do you know whose car that was? No, nobody knows.
But that's right in front of the thing one summer night. Everybody used to hang out in front of the CBGB's on summer nights. It was very idyllic, it was nice.
Next shot.
Yeah, that's from the same session that we were up on the roof with. This is more formal.
Yeah, sort of a mental hospital sort of vibe there. With
Yeah, this is one of my favorite pictures of mine, actually.
Where'd they get those suits from?
They were hazmat suits, and they throw them away after each show. At the time they really smelled bad. Because they would get really sweaty, and that was it. They were stuck with this one yellow suit each.
Next.
And this is us with Gary, who only is on the first album, and everybody.
Gary Valentine.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a sort of, what's his name, not the Hoople thing going. I used to do an Alice Cooper thing. Clem will not cop to have been a big Grateful Dead fan, but I am told that he was a big Deadhead back in the day.
It will go no further in this room. And Debbie, that T-shirt looks kind of iconic.
What, the Wio?
Yeah.
Who knows what that is?
I don't think it was for a supermarket or something, wasn't it?
I don't know.
A&P,
Is
yeah.
that an AMP logo?
Wio.
And
Did you take, is this your shot?
Yeah, I just
Chris?
put the thing on a timer and went in
Okay.
front of it, yeah.
All right, next.
Oh, and speaking of the Runaways, this is Kim Fowley. This is in Los Angeles. You know.
Fowley
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah, he's awesome. You know, they're coming to take me away. I don't know why that. If you go to YouTube, there are so many kids doing "They're Coming to Take Me Away." There's hundreds.
Was that his song?
Yeah. There's hundreds of versions.
And he was both an artist, but he was also a manager. Did he
Well,
manage?
he invented the Runaways. That's what the Queens of Noise was their album.
He was the
and their
Malcolm
song.
McLaren of the Runaways,
Huh?
so to speak.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. He was before Malcolm. I mean, he's still around. He's still got an internet presence.
Yeah,
Yes, he wanted us to, I don't know, to change our name or to do a song called Rabid Skunks of Hollywood.
Rabid
I'm
Skunks.
throwing it out in case anybody wants to use it.
Band
Kim
names
Valley,
are
Rabid
in
Skunks
short
of
supply.
Hollywood.
Right, next shot.
And this is
Oh boy.
an outtake from Mutant Monster Beach Party. Lester Bangs on the beach, and the two girls are locals, and these guys are you know, denizens of the beach there.
Well, so tell me, outtakes from a movie?
No, from the Fumetti, you know, from the Mutant Monster Beach Party was the punk magazine. You know what a Fumetti is, guys? It was a
Comic strip.
comic book with photos with balloons. It was a style that started in South America and Europe in the 60s. They used to be like soap operas, and Holstrom picked up on it and ran with it.
In Punk Magazine.
Punk Magazine, yeah. And they did The Legend of Nick Detroit, Mutant Monster Beach Party, I think one other, I can't remember. And that was so we all went and would shoot these things, and then Holstrom would do the artwork on them and do the captions. But this was us just hanging out.
Right, and Lester Bangs.
Lester Bangs
For
is-
folks who are not familiar with his work, a music writer who's held in very high regard, no longer with us. But he was a huge Blondie fan.
He was a fan and critic, though. He wrote a whole book, again, slamming Debbie for her overt sexuality.
Oh,
What was
You know.
your take on that, Debbie? I mean, and this book is like
I
an
could have
eBay
done so
list.
much more.
Yeah, as I repeatedly say, I wish he had stayed with us long enough to have Britney Spears rubbed in his face.
So to speak. But that book is the Lester Bangs Blondie book, incredibly rare. That's
Yeah,
like
well, we were doing our own book at the time, and he was kind of pissed off that we wouldn't interview with him extensively for his books. And I think he sort of flip-flopped it after a while. He was annoyed, but he was a character, and I remember him trying to do a band. Remember all that?
Yeah, he put a band together and he started doing shows, and I don't know if it was the first show, but afterwards he said, "Oh, I didn't realize it was this hard."
Says the critic.
Yeah.
Such a great shot.
Well, that's Eric Emerson. That's the guy we were talking about.
Eric Emerson on the right?
Yeah, on the right, and that's Cecil Coleman, who also is still around with an internet presence. But Eric was, physically gorgeous character, and just was a great all-around character. He was more than just a musician; he was just an all-around maniac.
Wow. And this was the context of this.
This was from the
shot?
Magic Tramps. They were total, full-on glitter, glam thing, But the music was kind of punkish. They had a violin player in there also. They used to do the William Tell Overture as their final song. They did a rock version of the William Tell Overture, which was really kind of great. I don't even know if there's any recordings beyond a couple of tapes of these guys. They never got into a studio, I don't think.
Yeah, they were a presence at the Mercer Arts Center. In fact, legend has it that they were there the day the Mercer Arts Center literally collapsed.
Yeah, Larry, the violin player, told me they ran out holding their instruments on their head. The Mercer Arts Center was connected to the Broadway Central Hotel, which was a derelict down and out hotel on Broadway.
It used to be incredibly elegant
Fancy, yeah.
place.
But
back
it
at the turn
became a
of the
thing
last
for
century.
transients, shall we say, and it collapsed. Somebody once told me if you go into an apartment and throw up in the same place on the floor over and over again, it will eventually eat away. You know? That
Gastric acid, very effective.
that could have been the cause, you know.
Yeah, that was back. Mercer Art Center was where the Kitchen Center, which is now over in Chelsea, started out. But after it collapsed, they had to find another home. Next shot.
And there's real early Ramones. And Tommy, Tommy I knew from the Mercer Art Center. He had a band called Butch. And he, at one point, I remember he approached me and said, "Wait, I heard you guys are playing downtown at this bar, same old thing." I thought they were a Latin band with the name, actually. But yeah, they were great. All those guys are sorely missed. Joey was such a great person all around. He was such a sweet guy. It was terrific, and they also had huge conflicts. I mean, you guys know the stories, but there was a period of about 5-6 months where I was the only one that had Johnny's phone number. I somehow got myself into this, intermediate position, so they would all call me as I called Johnny and tell him.
And Tommy's living upstate. He put out he's playing mandolin these days.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, Uncle
Didn't he
Monk.
put out like
he
a
has this band
bluegrass
called
record?
Uncle Monk with his long time girlfriend, and that's what they do.
Also very punk rock.
Yeah.
Next shot.
This is
as punk as it gets.
That's very noir. This is another one of my favorite shots of mine. This is Richard Hell with his last show with the Heartbreakers at Max's, upstairs at Max's.
Wow.
And that's Walter Lure's hand.
I was wondering whose hand that was.
And Richard was depressed leaving the Heartbreakers. Regardless, I don't know. I don't know really the inside story on it, but that was the last gig they did.
There was a rumor that you had rehearsed with the Heartbreakers.
I went
at one point.
played with them once to see what they were doing when they were starting up, and then they got Walter.
Probably worked out for the best.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm happy to have stuck with it. But Richard's, great.
Right, and
I gotta read that.
I
Really?
had mentioned he's got a new
Yeah, I
memoir
got to
that
read the
just came
book.
out,
I'm really
which is-
curious to see. I heard we just did the radio show, and the guy said his Christmas list is definitely going to be shorter this year because apparently he zapped a lot of people in the book, but I don't know.
Next shot.
And that's the Screamers in L.A. And the funny thing is, Tomato goes way back to the CB's scene. He used to be in this sort of drag ensemble, which used to perform at CBGB's. And I just had a long connection with him and Tommy Gear, and they had a sort of suicide-ish band called the Screamers out of Los Angeles then.
Did you guys have a base of operation in Los Angeles? I mean, in terms of the
not
punk
really.
scene there, or
Yeah, we used to just go there, sort of frequently. The first time we went there was like, overnight. We went to the Whiskey, and they were having a record party for the Hollywood Stars. And the Hollywood Stars was a band who had this sort of Aerosmith scarves and glam rock and bell bottoms and this stuff. And like overnight, then we did our show, and like the next night, everybody was wearing the little ties and the skinny jeans and all that stuff. It just went. It was kind of the swan song of the Hollywood glam thing until the hair bands later on.
next shot.
Oh, that's Stu Bader's in Paris. This is like 2 weeks before he passed on the roof in Paris. That's nice. I can't remember what shots I had given these guys.
What a beautiful shot.
Yeah, he was a good guy, sweetheart.
Yeah, actually, if people who were here last night for the program, the movie Punking Out, the Dead Boys figured prominently.
Dead Boys were great.
Another one of the bands from the scene who were they made some noise, but they didn't have as high a profile as a lot of other folks. Is that the last shot? I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Visitor asks, what are your thoughts on the brand new cover of One Way or Another by the British group One Direction?
You have thoughts?
Gone.
Really. How could we not like it? Really. Those guys are really big. It's got the song out to all these kids who'd never heard of us. I had 3 people, my 12-year-old now knows who you are, at least.
Did you see their performance? Did you watch them?
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. I like the way the track sounds. It's okay.
It's sort of a mashup with teenage
Yeah,
kicks
it's a mashup.
also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a disdain for Justin Bieber and these guys the way that a lot of the people do. I don't know. I don't quite get it. I remember being disdainful of things when I was a kid, though. But I'm all for it, whatever. I like Justin Bieber.
And do you guys have publishing on that? Did you guys write that song?
I think it goes song by song, really.
Well, that was a charity thing anyway, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a charity thing.
The publishing
Yeah.
away too.
Right. No, but I mean the idea of disliking an artist because they stand for something. I don't know. It's sort of like more about the material. Because sometimes I could really not be really interested in an artist, but I really like one of their songs.
Yeah.
So.
I find in my old age I'm not really hating on anything musical too much,
Yeah.
The way I used to when I was a kid. We've been delving into Latin music and stuff, and I get so many people are just like, so many people are anti-it, or anti-reggaeton or whatever the hell it is. I just don't, I don't feel the same way, but the internet, is all about hating something, so.
Ain't it true? Let's take some questions here. Gentleman in the center front there.
Hi, Chris. My name is Phil. Thanks so much for so much beautiful music.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. My classmates, Shaheen and Andy and I, were at the 14th Street Palladium in the fall of '78 to see you perform. And the opening act was the Heartbreakers, who really tore it up. They did a great job. And your set was terrific. And when you played Fade Away and Radiate from Parallel Lines, Robert Fripp came out, and I think he sat on a stool, and he reproduced and exponentially produced all those far out sci-fi sounds that are in that song on the record.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I have the opportunity to ask you,
Yes.
but it's about time. How did that come about? What was the connection, and how did he happen to end up on stage with you at that time?
What a very good question. Because maybe people in the back didn't say, the question was, how did these guys connect with Robert Fripp for both a live performance and for
we did
some
a
recording?
bunch of live performances. We even have we did a version of Heroes with him in London, which was recorded. We actually played the amazing line from Heroes with us, which is.
Did he actually come to CBGB's?
Yeah, I think he sought us out. I think he
showed up.
tracked us down
Yeah.
at some point, and he was.
Yeah, he was living in New York for a while, and he was getting into more abstract stuff. He was making those instrumental records with guitar loops.
Yeah, he's
in the
great,
sort of late '70s.
He has an identical twin.
Yeah, he has a twin sister. I have a photograph.
Identical.
I have a photograph of his twin sister.
Identical.
And I did 2 record covers for him, which was great. Yeah, the stuff, the thing on Parallel Lines on Fade Away Radio is amazing. There's one moment in the thing where he actually zooms effortlessly up to the very last fret. If you track it with a guitar, it's crazy, and how easy and casual it sounds with his playing, and it's mind-boggling to me. I mean, I could never do it.
Oh my goodness, it was one of the great Blondie B-sides is that live version of Heroes with him. It's like 8 minutes long with Robert Fripp, who plays guitar on the David Bowie version. Just absolutely, I mean, he just
Yeah, he came up with us about like
soars.
maybe 3
He sounds in
4
love.
times. Yeah, he was great. He was always great. And it was just always just the fuzz tone, and that was it. And the guitar, it was not much anything tech-wise.
Sir?
Hi. You guys collaborated with Cheap Trick on this amazing song in this movie called...
It went on to be called Rock and Rule.
Yes.
It was originally called Drats, which was a terrible name.
Yeah, it was.
I really always thought that thing was some gigantic Canadian tax write-off.
Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering if you guys knew why there was never a soundtrack that was released, because because that song was fantastic, and you had stuff from and you had songs from Lou Reed and Iggy Pop
And Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like I think it's on DVDs now. Maybe, I don't know. It's okay. It's kind of a dumb cartoon, but yeah, it had a great music score. You moderate.
I can't see a darn thing. Gentleman in the
This guy
bold
with the striped shirt.
striped shirt. Exactly. Listen.
Did you say that you had played with the left back?
Yeah.
I like that group. You mentioned.
Well, they weren't called the Left Back. They were called the Morticians when I was with them.
What I was going to say was the song "Walk Away, Renee." As you know, most covers, white bands covering blacks, and I'm sure you know what group covered that song.
Is that the Morticians? It's amazing, the internet. It's all there at our fingertips.
What was the second part there?
No, I was saying that was covered. That record, "Walk Away, Renee."
Yeah.
That was covered by the Four Tops.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Was it? I'm guessing was it 67 or 8?
Oh, yeah, well, when I was hanging out with them, yeah, with Steve, maybe even before, it was right,
Really?
65 or 6.
Was it that early?
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't have the song then. That was pre to that.
Right.
Yeah.
The main thing is you played with them.
It was brief.
Yeah. It was the A&P, the Rio. It was A&P.
Yeah.
Is Harry, it was the A&P or the Rio on the shirt?
Oh, yeah, the AMP, yeah.
Hey, okay, good. Does that still exist? I don't know.
They never paid me.
Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, you mentioned with Art of Glass, Kraftwerk, which is one of my favorites, and Deborah Harry's voice with that synthesizer stuff really was tremendous and a real trendsetter, I think. What influenced you with the synthesizer? I know you worked with Giorgio Moroder too, I believe. Any thoughts or comments about that? I really thought it worked very well.
Well, how do we get into
The
the
synthesizers, they were
synthesizers?
just there, we just had those early Roland synthesizers, and it was such a big deal to be able to sync up the synthesizer and the rhythm machine
Yeah.
at the time, it was, I remember it was,
I think more than anything, it was when Jimmy started
Jimmy,
playing
yeah.
with us, because he was a keyboard nut, Farfisa nut, and then it just sort of grew. And we got the Polyboog, and it was all downhill from there.
Another great performance from that era was you guys covering the Donna Summer song "I Feel Love," which I think that was probably a Giorgio Moroder
yeah, that's Giorgio.
Yeah.
production,
Sure, yeah.
but it's also floating around on YouTube.
And Giorgio told us that he had the concept for that song way back and just could never get it done, that he had that idea in the 60s somewhere to just have the synthesizer track with the vocal,
Right. Yeah, I mean, the song that people who are electronic music geeks look to as really one of the one of the
Yeah.
sort of cornerstones of techno music and just kind of electronic pop now.
Yeah.
So
When you
there's something
listen to
about
the
you.
track. I was just listening to that track recently with the kids in the car, and it's you can hear it moving. It's not the same as mod. You can hear there's fluctuations in the time. It's not the same as the rigidity of modern, time sync. I don't know if you get that, but you can if you live.
Well, yeah, it was all mechanical.
It was
all
all
done by hand.
semi-hand done. Yeah.
Yeah.
04.
We are the victims of the technological age. What can I say?
We're getting bleed through here. Oh, madam.
My name's Heather, and I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of, you guys wrote your autobiography, was it roughly 1980, Making Tracks, the right one? I think it's a fantastic, totally underrated history of New York City punk. And I've always wanted to know, Debbie, if you had plans to write a memoir. Everyone else has written them, and hasn't really had the kind of life that you've had. So I think that it would be fantastic if you gave us some comment.
Okay. I'll try. I'll really try.
So we should get around to it while we can still fucking remember
Yeah.
anything.
I did actually come up with a sort of a sneaky way to get myself to do it, so I might actually do it. Yeah.
You heard it here first in the New York Public Library.
I have to read Richards first, though.
Yeah, read Richards first.
Yeah.
You can just draw from that. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Hi, my name's Harry. I want to say a couple things to both of you. Thanks for still being here, not only as people, but as performers and with the group and everything. Love you guys. My name is Clem. Would love to see him. Debbie, I have been fostering the same crush on you since 1977.
Oh!
And haven't done anything to dissuade me. So I wanted to ask both of you, you guys have, in your career, been at so many famous locations around and had to do, been a part of the scene in so many different spots that don't exist anymore. I'm talking like venues and clubs, whether it's, the Academy of Music, Palladium, CB's, Max's, if you want to go to like Continental, Bottom Line, whatever. I wanted to know what your thoughts were on whether you felt the city maybe had a responsibility to kind of preserve some of these places that don't exist anymore.
What a great question.
Yeah.
Does the city have some sort of responsibility to preserve some of these performance spaces that
Yeah.
these guys have been in over the years? And
I don't know. It's a business after all,
Shape the
and
city.
Yeah,
and
it's murder.
things, this. I mean, look, if the Cavern could go, I mean, anything could happen, right? I mean,
We used to live on 58th and 7th, and on like 9th Avenue, right by Columbus Circle, was the most beautiful old French-style copper-top building hotel, which had a cage elevator, like European-style cage elevator. It's been replaced by some grotesque, fucking horrible, two-dimensional office building. So it's just about the money at this point with New York City. I find I have very few conversations with people in New York that don't have real estate in there somewhere.
well, I don't know. I mean, it would be nice if clubs stayed open so everybody could just, go back and, but maybe it's more exciting that you have to discover new places.
But I saw a lot of anti-CB sentimentalists when CB closed. People saying, fuck it, move on, whatever. Even old timers there. That said, Hilly could have bought that whole damn thing 5 times over. He just was lazy about it,
Yeah.
because he certainly made enough money from the T-shirts and stuff. The last few years there.
Yeah.
Have either of you guys been into the John Barbados store, which has been
Yeah, sure.
set up inside
Yeah.
I think
CBGB's?
it was-
What are your
I haven't
thoughts
set
on
foot
it?
in it yet, but
No?
he's a nice guy.
It's all right. He is very nice. I like John.
He's a
Yeah.
sweet guy. We're
I
gonna
mean, he has
shoot
bands
something,
there
and
once in a
we're
while.
We're going to shoot something for this thing coming up.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in there and I feel in the way that these places are usually completely erased in New York. I give the guy props for like, he respected the tradition. He actually wanted to see it not be a Starbucks. So I might not be able to afford his shoes, but at least I can go in there and like, you know, see some pieces of CBGBs preserved under plexiglass, like
the mural still
like
there?
a museum,
Bomb-
which is
the
kinda
mural
touching.
behind there was a mural there of all the derelicts, of all the guys on the wall. They, like, even probably was there from the very early days of when Hilly was there.
Behind the stage, you mean?
It was on the side behind the bar, all the way towards the back.
Oh, okay.
I'll check. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if that's still there.
Yeah.
But
Adding on to this topic, talk about historical places, Reader Bob's.
All right.
Yeah, Bleecker Bob's.
They gave a lot of bands their stars. How do you feel about them closing? Do you feel they gave you the stars? Are you going to visit them before they close?
What, Bleecker Bob's?
Yeah.
Yeah, we like Bob a lot. He was such
Bob was
a
quite
crazy
a great character, you
yeah.
know, and he certainly, he was always very sarcastic. Well, he had very, you know, sort of very sarcastic
Caustic
bitterness, you know,
personality, yeah.
which was great. And, you know, he'd come around and, yeah, drop little remarks after your shows. It was sort of fun. But, no, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the place is kind of, how can Bleecker Bob's possibly stay there unless it's like sort of patronized and becomes, as you say, like a landmark and is the rent is paid by the city or some, you know, record label? That's who should step in. The record label.
Yeah.
do they still exist, or they're still?
That's the thing, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they do exist, but
I mean, Interscope should pay for Bleecker Bob's.
well, I mean, theoretically, that would be the proper, you know, relationship. You know, that if they wanted to memorialize the record business, that a place like Bleecker Bob's or Colony or, you know, one of those places would be,
Right.
you know, preserved and say, you know, Hall of whatever, blah blah blah. But you know, Bob took up weightlifting, so what?
Yes, it's sobering though. I think if anybody wants to pay their respects to Bleecker Bob's, you've got like a couple more weeks, and it is going to be back there, sir.
I'm Freddie. I was your publicist at Chrysalis Records.
Hi, Freddie.
Hi, Freddie.
Hi,
Freddie.
I first want to say about the miracle that we're all still here.
Yes, thank you.
Considering what went on.
Yeah,
Chris and I share January 5th, I think, also as a birthday.
nice.
I've seen you lately live, but you gave me so many memories. I got to Chrysalis just as you were getting there from private stock, and I was so excited. I knew, you know, you were just in it, and it was such a mix of high energy, frustration, anger, joy. I went down to Atlanta to bring you pictures of each of the B album cover. I mean, these are very personal memories that, you know, you gave. But we, you know, I wanted to say that I always respected you as artists. You didn't just keep putting out the same records. I mean, the transitions between some of the records after the first two there's pretty wide space. You moved from here to here to here. You didn't stay locked in to the same sound just to sell records. You know, I wanted to.
Thanks for noticing.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thanks for coming.
Hi, thank you very much for coming. I just had a question. It's okay, I'm short.
It's okay.
My question is just that, as alluded to in the program minutes here, you contributed a number of songs and collaborated for cinema, for films. I'm curious, could you speak a little bit about, I guess, that creative process? I think, you know, if I were to do everything over again personally, I would probably want to score films, because it seems like, well, because to be quite frank, you know, everyone who writes, you know, everyone
Yeah, no, I'm trying to, I'd like to get into it a little better. Mark Mothersbaugh is married to an agent, so that helps him get a lot of gigs, I think. But I'd like to do a few more. Yeah, it's, you know, it's kind of what you'd imagine. It's a back and forth between whoever's putting the film together.
Yeah, I don't think there's always going to be somebody that you're, you know, saying, oh, I think that should be changed, or, you know, I mean, that's what it is.
I mean, yeah, people are looking over your shoulder.
I mean,
It's competitive.
Do you think Alfred Hitchcock said anything to Bernard Herrmann?
Yeah, fuck, are you kidding? I mean, didn't they have a big falling out towards the end? And,
yeah, they tried to kill each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and all that stuff. For me, I grew up with film scores before I was into rock and roll. When I was, 11, 12, the first kind of music contacts I had was from going to the movies when I was a kid. Jar and Lawrence of Arabia and all that stuff was a big influence on me. Nino Rota, etc. So it's always been in the mix. When we worked on the Marauder thing, we got to hang out with Paul Schrader. That was great. And Debbie, the lyric was all, when, Giorgio gave us the demo of the song, and the lyric was man machine. And it's like, he's a man, he screws the girls. It was very German and literal. And she based her lyric on the colors of the film was very color conscious, and things like that. She was referencing things that were going on in the film.
Debbie, I remember seeing you sing with the Jazz Passengers, and that was like a huge departure. Was that something that was just kind of off the cuff, or did you rehearse for a long time with them? Do you see yourself doing that kind of music again? And the crowd loved it, and I loved it.
Oh, thanks. That's funny that you bring them up, because they, Roy especially, but Roy and I think Curtis, the leaders of the Jazz Passengers, were originally in the Lounge Lizards, and the Lounge Lizards were sort of a punk jazz. So they actually consider themselves part of the punk scene as jazz musicians, and always feel, I know that they have felt for a long time, that they've been overlooked, especially by, I don't know, who's the guy who did that big program on jazz, that series? Yes, that this little New York segment of jazz was completely overlooked. And it was great to work with them, and to, I learned a lot. It was good musical education, and, Roy is a great character, and smart and funny. So, it was fun. It was crazy. It was a good time for me. I don't know if I'm really that interested in doing that kind of performance, because it's a different relationship to the audience. I'm sort of like a side man when I'm working with them. I have to sort of to hold back a little bit, and I'm not there anymore. I'm just doing it. I don't feel like I should. I don't know. Maybe someday it'll happen when I'm real tired. No, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, that I just don't want to. That I want to be very much more integral. I don't feel integrated right now.
I think it really spoke to, that music really spoke to how you guys have just really drawn on all sorts of music, just looked at the divisions between genres as pretty porous. And it's one of the things that I've just always admired about your work through the years. So.
I think that we have always said this, that we've grown up in this metropolitan area where it's always been a meltdown of cultures and styles of music, and fortunately, grew up listening to all different stuff and being turned on by it. I mean, when you're a kid, you're open. You're listening to this stuff. You're not socially involved. Music scene is not you're just a kid. You listen, something gets you. And you just becomes part of your nature.
I think we have time for a couple more questions.
I don't know if I have one particular. It sort of happens night by night in a way. You know, something will go really well, or I'll sort of be really in the mood, and it'll all sort of, sort of, all the mechanisms will fit together nicely. But I mean, I definitely have a strong relationship to Heart of Glass, because that was a song that came about early on and never really got recorded for about 5 years, and it sort of has a I don't know, a soft seriousness to it. You know, there's a sort of a a hardcore to it, but yet it has, it's very romantic at the same time.
I get very involved with what we're working on.
Yeah.
The current stuff. I mean, I can't sit down and listen to Heart of Glass 5 times in a row.
No.
But I listen to some of the things we're working on now over and over again.
Yeah, well,
So,
you're producing,
yeah.
you're working.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the new record that you're working on? It sounds, from hearing you guys on Soundcheck the other day, it sounds like an exciting project.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean,
We're
I
glad to
always
record.
like the new stuff, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm all excited about
we're
it.
always highly inspired by getting, our asses into new material.
Yeah, I think it's more successful than the Panic of Girls record, certainly, but I don't know. I can't tell. I never know what people are going to think of anything, Really.
Chris is going to have to move to Cuba after this.
Well, you're tapping some other musicians for this project.
I have an
What's
affinity
up?
for Latin music over the
Kind of
last
very Latin.
3-4 years, but there's only like two tracks really, because all the fucking diehard rock fans are like, it's like, we must have rock, we must have guitars. I mean, I have kids like writing from South America, don't do any more, cumbia music. Because, they're all there with their guitars.
Well, we have a great song from a band called the Dukes from New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah, that's
So we've covered a song, or I guess the song that they wrote. I don't know if they've
wrote
ever
for us,
recorded it.
yeah. No, they wrote that for us.
They wrote that for us. It's called Drag You Around, which is kind of great. And
Stuff.
yeah, we've got all, what is it, 16 tracks?
In the
We've got
midst of
16.
finishing it, yeah. And then
There are cumbias?
there's here's a cumbia track with the guys from
An
System.
electro cumbia?
Huh? Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
electro cumbia with a guy. And we got the guys from Sistema Solar on it. They are a great Colombian cumbia band. But all this stuff is in Spanish, so it doesn't really cross over. And that was my 3 years ago. I started listening to all this stuff, and I just kept thinking, if this was in English, it would all be mega. I don't know. It just doesn't. So, but we'll see what happens.
Were you feeling the cumbia grooves?
I feel
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I listen to that stuff all the time, yeah. That's some of my favorite stuff, and my Spanish is muy malo. I mean,
That's the beauty of, living in New York.
Okay, let's do one more question. Down there in the corner.
Didn't quite hear that.
There anything there? You guys have worked in a lot of different genres. Is there anything out there that you have not gotten into that you aspire to?
well, yeah, sure, but it's a lot of it is based on Debbie's vocal and vocal style, so, it's not like we're
Now,
gonna...
you mean I'm holding you back? That does it.
Yeah, I mean,
Get the guy in Lincoln Center, and
I'd like to do something
opera
like No
writing
Church in the Wild,
aspirations.
but, that's it. We can't do Kanye West type material.
What did we say before
What?
about Stalin?
Yeah, so I was looking up the stuff that happened in 1977, the musical events of 1977, and my favorite one was Stalin's name got taken out of the Russian national anthem in 1977. That is definitely my first musical event of 1977.
And?
It's
Right, Kanye West was born, yeah.
And with that, perhaps,
Maybe.
can we wrap it up with a round of applause for Debbie Harris?